When I saw Infinity War, I, like many, was saddened by the death of Tom Hiddleston's Loki. It's a character he'd grown to love over time. We'd seen how he'd changed and become aware of the fact that no matter what he does, he's still technically an insignificant speck on the, on the cosmic scale. Like we all are, like even the Avengers are, really. There are very few beings who actually matter at that level, and we're starting to get to that point now in MCU. But it was a sad moment, and even Tom himself went, to interviews saying this is the end of an era. It was a wild ride, but that's it. Now, whether he knew anything and was being very in character still, or whether it was an executive decision later on, and they're like, people like this character, we've got to bring him back, I don't know. I really want to think that he knew and he was being very Loki, though. But of course, we then got to return to the non-repentant, the non-changed version of Loki from the Battle of New York. And it gives us an interesting jumping-off point. This is the same character's origin, but how can we show how, again, he's still going to come to a point of realising it doesn't matter, and then that he actually wants to do something good and worthwhile? How can we show a different journey to that point in a very different way? And I love this Loki series because it does that so well. You actually see the development that Tom Hiddleston went through over years of movies done in a 6-part series. And that's great. So let's talk about this series. Of course, it stars Tom Hiddleston as Loki, as well as Sophia DiMartino as another Loki who calls herself Sylvie. It also stars Owen Wilson, and now I'm going to butcher the names, as well as Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Wunmi Mosaku. And everyone here was doing such a great job. I've loved Gugu Mbatha-Raw since San Junipero, the Black Mirror episode, but I've also liked Wunmi Mosaku as well, because she was also in the playtest episode of Black Mirror, which starred Wyatt Russell. I'm starting to get the feeling that Hollywood is literally using Black Mirror as a plucking point, to sort of get new talent. It's working. I'm really enjoying it. The fact they're getting this great British talent from Black Mirror and putting them out there into the world, I will support that. But we're not here to talk about great casting choices, although that is part of what makes the series great. What really made this series great was the fact that it just leaned into the weird. Next up on the slate, I think, of movies, or at least within a couple, is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And that's going to be weird. It's got to be weird because of that concept. And this series directly sets that up. I don't want to say too much in the early part of the video. I like to do what I normally do and talk about it generally and then spoiler stuff. But that's as far as I can go without really getting into any spoiler territory. I really enjoyed this series. The set pieces were great. The interactions between the two Lokis were great. And the various different variants that we see. Once they go through to a certain point and we see other versions of this same character, played, of course, by Richard E. Grant. Everyone knew he was going to be in it somewhere, as well as like the kid Loki played by Jack Field, a lizard version, a Loki if he was Thor, which is amazing. All these ideas that we've seen variants of in the comic. That was not meant to be a pun. But all these different versions of characters, even like the classic Loki, before we sort of adopted this, it must look realistic style. If they'd have leaned it like they did with WandaVision in the Halloween outfit for Vision. I love the fact that they're not shying away from that. That was the problem, I think, under Avi Arad and everything like that in the earlier days of the licensed Marvel works. They didn't want to lean into the weirdness and the ridiculousness. But Marvel have understood that Guardians of the Galaxy did so well because they allowed it to be itself. They allowed it to be this weird ragtag group of misfits fighting across the universe. So if you're going to do something about multiversal wars and pruning timelines and nexus events and characters seeing different versions of themselves, you lean into that, and you lean into that hard, because if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. So this series was great, and we got the sting at the end that Loki will return for season 2. Now, whether that will happen after Multiverse of Madness and whatever fallout from that will play into the series, or whether it's sooner, I don't know. I haven't looked anything up. I always say I like to do these fresh with the information just in the show as much as possible. So I don't know about release dates for season 2 or whether they're even released or aware of anything that they're doing yet. But I am eager for that season 2. There's so much good here. How they handled it, the characters they brought in made sense. How they handled those characters worked so well. And yeah, it's weird, but it also has a lot of heart. Like I said before, we condense Loki's arc, if you will, over years into 6 episodes, and it doesn't feel forced or rushed. That's great writing, great acting, great direction. Across the board, everyone had to be at a certain level to make that work. Now, before I get into spoiler territory, like I always like to do, the back of the box blurb, the quick, here's my recommendation kind of level. Yeah, if you are interested in the MCU, well, watch it because it's going to be relevant. Of course it is. If you just like Tom Hiddleston because he's rather attractive, watch it, why not? If you like multiversal time-traveling stuff, watch it. And then watch the rest of the MCU to understand all the references. Basically, watch it. That's my recommendation to anyone and everyone. If you've clicked on this video, you've already got some interest in it, so do it. So now we can get into that spoiler territory. The reveals of what's coming in the future, obviously, what the multiverse is all about, the fact that all of these characters who we're told were created by the Timekeepers are variants themselves who have had their minds wiped. And of course, the fact of what they did to Sylvie is awful. A child doesn't know that they're a Nexus event, doesn't know that they've created a branch in a timeline. Now, we don't know what she did. Could have been awful. Who knows? But she was still a child. And that's awful. As we learn, of course, pruning isn't a death sentence, but still. So this ruse, if you will, of the Timekeepers that we later learn are just robots anyway. They're not real people. They're not real beings. But of course, the biggest reveal comes in the last episode. And if you know anything about a certain Marvel character, they have like a pocket dimension where they live sometimes in certain iterations of that, or certain variants, if you will, of that character. So when they go into this place, and there is a theory floating around out there, I don't know if anyone's seen it, I saw it was on Nerdist, about Miss Minutes being the villain, and when it was her in this sort of castle, the Citadel at the end of time, when it was her, I was like, wait, is this theory actually right? Is Tara Strong the villain? Also, great performance from Tara Strong. I loved it. But I was like, what the heck? But when she said he remains, I was like, I know who that is. Anyone who's got a vague awareness of multiversal stuff, who's watched anything about, the next slate of films and how it's likely to involve certain characters, probably not knew, but had a very strong belief that a certain Jonathan Majors would turn up as a certain Kang the Conqueror. If you've been catching up on the news, you knew that Jonathan Majors had been cast for Quantumania, and so you've probably seen his face. So as soon as he was revealed on screen as He Who Remains, everyone knew this was Kang the Conqueror. Although this was Kang the problem solver, I guess. I mean, he says himself he's been known by many terms, including a conqueror, which is nice wink. He never refers to himself as Kang at all in this. But these references and things like that, it really sort of reinforces it. But the idea that there are worse versions of him out there. And as we see at the end, when Sylvie is allowed to kill him, and everything starts going very branchy, very fast, we see, once Loki's back at the TVA, a huge statue, not of the Timekeepers we've seen, but of a version of Kang. This is probably the version that we're likely to experience in Quantumania. I would say. I mean, I don't know. I might be wrong. But this is possibly one of the more Conqueror-style versions, if you will, of the character. And the fact that Loki and Sylvie were instrumental in this. I mean, the fact that, like I said before, his character arc over this series gets him to the same point. At the end, he's panicked. He goes to Mobius and Wunmi Mosaku's Hunter B-15, I think. I might have got that wrong. I'll correct myself, and someone will probably do it in the comments. But those two characters not knowing him, because this is now not the reality he knew. Everything's gone very branchy, very wrong, very quickly, and he realises he's made a mistake. And like I say, we then get the end stinger of Loki will return for season 2, and I can't wait for it. I also can't wait for Multiverse of Madness and everything else coming down the line. No Way Home is guaranteed now to be multiversal. We've opened it up. We now know that this is what allows those next few films to happen. We thought maybe it was the Darkhold tampering at the end of WandaVision, but this is clearly, if you will, the Nexus event that allows the next slate of Marvel and Sony Marvel films to really exist. And I'm excited. I don't know if you can tell. I'm there like a child. I'm so excited about this because I've been a fan of the idea of multiple worlds and the many worlds interpretation, multiverses, that kind of things for years. Ever since the concept came to me, every single decision you make could create a branching timeline. And that's always been fascinating. I love that concept. So getting to see superheroes in that realm is brilliant. And now we've got the technology with CGI and what have you to make that work, to make that look good. We can delve into these strange Escher-esque worlds, and it's not going to look janky and like a 70s awfully produced TV series. It's going to look really good. The fact we've got great de-aging and things like that, we can show different characters throughout various parts of their lives, and it's fine. So I'm really excited for what comes forward. But of course, this was meant to be mostly about Loki, and yes, it was a great series. The reason I'm so excited is because this set it up so well, and we got a return for Tom Hiddleston. He wasn't on my radar at all before the MCU, but he's definitely one of my favourite actors. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what comes forward, but that's all I want to say about Loki. So until next time, as always, thanks. That's all I really want to say about Loki. So until next time, as always, thank you for watching and take care.